I had been trying to get Nero Wolfe to look at the bank statement for 20 minutes when the doorbell rang. It was 9:10 on a Tuesday evening in October, and the rain had been hammering West 35th Street since noon. Nobody with sense was out in it. "I'll see who it is," I said, dropping the statement on his desk where he couldn't miss it. "Maybe it's someone who wants to pay us." Wolfe, ensconced in his oversized chair behind his desk, merely grunted and turned another page of his book. Something about the cultivation of Dendrobium nobile. He'd been reading it for 3 days, which meant he was either fascinated or using it as a shield against the real world. With Wolfe, it could go either way. I went to the hall and looked through the one-way glass. A woman stood on the stoop, water streaming off her umbrella like a waterfall. She was maybe 30, wearing a raincoat that had given up trying to keep her dry. Her face was pale in the porch light, and she kept glancing over her shoulder. I opened the door. "Yes? I need to see Nero Wolfe." Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. "It's about the Garrett case. Mr. Wolfe doesn't see people after 9 o'clock. Come back tomorrow morning after 11. She shook her head, sending water flying. "Tomorrow will be too late. Please, I know something about Martin Garrett's murder that nobody else knows. The man they arrested. He didn't do it." I've heard variations of that song before, usually from relatives of the accused, but something about her eyes made me step back. "Come in, you're making a puddle." She practically fell through the doorway. I took her umbrella and raincoat, hanging them on the rack. Underneath, she wore a dark suit that probably looked professional when it was dry. Her shoes squelched on the floor. "Wait here," I said, and went back to the office. Wolfe didn't look up. "No. You haven't heard what she wants." "I don't need to. It's after 9 o'clock, it's raining, and I'm reading. She says she knows something about the Garrett murder. Says the wrong man's been arrested." That got half an eye. Martin Garrett had been a journalist for the Gazette, one of those investigative types who made enemies the way bakers make bread. He'd been found dead in his apartment 10 days ago. Skull cracked open with his own award, some bronze thing for excellence in reporting. The cops had arrested his neighbor Dennis Kowalsski after finding Garrett's blood on Kowalski's shoes and Kowalski's fingerprints on the door, open and shut, according to Inspector Kramer. "The police have made an arrest," Wolfe said. "The matter is concluded. Not according to the woman dripping on our carpet." He sighed. One of those productions that used most of his lung capacity. "Very well, bring her in. But if this is merely another instance of misguided faith in a guilty relative, you'll answer for it." I fetched her from the hall. She walked into the office like she was entering a church, eyes wide at the sight of Wolfe in his throne. I got her seated in the red leather chair, and took my usual spot at my desk, notebook ready. "Your name?" Wolfe asked. "Helen Avery. I'm a paralegal at Donovan Klein and Associates. We're not handling the Kowalski case. I want to be clear about that. This isn't about business." "Then, what is it about?" She leaned forward, water still dripping from her hair. "There was someone else there that night. Someone who saw what really happened, but they disappeared the next morning, and everyone seems happy to pretend they never existed." Wolfe's eyes opened completely. "Never a good sign. Explain." "I have a friend who works at the Gazette. The morning after Garrett was killed, before the police even found the body, someone called the paper's tip line. They were terrified, barely coherent. They said they'd seen someone leaving Garrett's apartment around midnight, and it wasn't Dennis Kowalski. Why didn't this person contact the police?" "They tried. My friend says they called back an hour later, even more scared. Said they'd gone to the precinct, but saw someone there who frightened them. They hung up, and haven't been heard from since." I looked up from my notebook. "Your friend didn't report this?" Helen's face flushed. "She tried," she told her editor, "but he said without a name or any way to verify it. It was just another crank call. The police had already arrested Kowalski. Case closed." Wolfe studied her. "Why come to me?" "Because in 4 days, Dennis Kowalski goes on trial for murder. His public defender is overwhelmed and underfunded. The DA's office wants a quick conviction, and somewhere in this city is a person who knows the truth, but is too terrified to tell it." She stood up, dignity fighting with desperation. I've saved $3,000. I know it's not your usual fee, but… Sit down, Wolfe commanded. She sat. He closed his book, the first encouraging sign I'd seen. You said this witness saw someone at the precinct who frightened them. Did your friend provide any details? Only that the witness mentioned seeing the man from the photos. They wouldn't say which photos or which man. Wolfe was silent for a full minute. I watched him, recognizing the signs. He was bothered by something. And when Nero Wolfe gets bothered, things happen. Finally, he spoke. Archie, get the file on the Garrett case. I already had it. We keep files on all the major murders in the city. Call it a hobby. I handed it over, and watched him flip through the newspaper clippings, and my notes from conversations with Long Cohen. Here, he said, pointing to a paragraph in the Times coverage, Mr. Garrett was working on a major investigation at the time of his death, according to colleagues, though the subject remains unknown. And here, police found numerous documents in Mr. Garrett's apartment, all related to his current work. He looked up, yet nowhere in any report is there mention of what he was investigating. Helen leaned forward again. You'll take the case? I'll consider it. First, I need the name of your friend at the Gazette. Second, I need everything you can remember about Dennis Kowalsski, how you know him, why you believe in his innocence. Third, I need your word that you've told me the truth, complete and unadorned. Lisa Chen is my friend. She works the night desk. Dennis Kowalsski. I don't know him personally, but I've seen the evidence. It's all circumstantial. The blood could have been transferred. He helped Garrett move furniture the week before. The fingerprints mean nothing. They were neighbors, and Dennis has no motive. They were friends. Yet the police arrested him because they needed someone to arrest. Garrett had made enemies. His investigations hurt powerful people, but Dennis Kowalsski is nobody. A porter at a hotel, no connections, no money for a real lawyer, the perfect fool guy. Wolfe opened his eyes again. You speak with considerable passion for someone you don't know personally. She met his gaze. I've seen innocent people railroaded before. It's why I became a paralegal, to help prevent it. But this time, I can't do it through proper channels. Everyone wants this case closed and forgotten, including, perhaps, the actual murderer. Yes. Wolfe looked at me. Archie, what time is it? 9:37. And when does the Gazette night desk begin work? Usually around 8. He turned back to Helen. Miss Avery. I'll need you to call your friend immediately. Arrange for Archie to speak with her tonight. If her information proves credible, I'll take the case. Your $3,000 will suffice as a retainer. She nearly collapsed with relief. Thank you. I'll call her now. May I use… I showed her to the phone in the hall. While she made the call, I returned to the office. You think there's something here? I asked. Wolfe had reopened his orchid book, but he wasn't reading. I think Inspector Kramer is competent, but not infallible. I think a witness who vanishes after being frightened at a police station is unusual. And I think Martin Garrett's unfinished investigation is conspicuous by its absence from all reports. So we going witness hunting? You are going witness hunting. I am going to finish this chapter en route to Vision. He paused. But Archie, be careful. A witness who disappears completely is either very clever or very dead. Find out which before you commit us too deeply. Helen returned, face flushed with success. Lisa will meet you at the diner on 42nd and 8th in an hour. She can't leave the desk, but she gets a break at 10:30. I got her contact information and showed her out. When I returned, Wolfe had his book open but his eyes closed, his thinking pose. Well, I asked. Get your raincoat, Archie, and take the camera. If we're hunting ghosts, we'll need to document whatever traces they've left behind. I grinned. So we're taking it? We're exploring it. There's a difference. He opened one eye. But yes, confound it. We're taking it. 4 days to find a witness who doesn't want to be found, identify a murderer the police have already caught, and keep an innocent man from prison. It's impossible. Your favorite kind of case. Pooh. Go. And Archie, Yeah. Take an umbrella. This rain isn't stopping. And neither, I suspect, is whoever frightened our witness into hiding. I got my coat and headed for the door. Behind me, I heard Wolfe mutter something about deadlines and democracy. But I didn't catch it all. I was already thinking about Lisa Chen, and what she might tell me about a voice on the phone, terrified and running. The rain hit me as soon as I stepped outside. Cold and hard like the city itself. Somewhere out there was a person who'd seen Martin Garrett's killer. My job was to find them before the trial started, or before someone else found them first. 4 days. In this city, you could disappear forever in 4 hours if you knew how. But you'd leave traces. You always left traces. I opened my umbrella and headed uptown. The hunt was on. Lisa Chen was already in the diner when I arrived, sitting in a back booth with a clear view of the door. She had the look of someone who lived on coffee and deadlines, thin, wired, with ink stains on her fingers, and skepticism in her eyes. I slid into the booth across from her. "You're Goodwin?" "That's me. Thanks for meeting." She glanced at her watch. "I've got 20 minutes. Helen says Wolfe might actually do something about this. He's interested. Tell me about the call." She pulled out a reporter's notebook, pages covered in shorthand. October 3rd, 7:43 a.m. I was about to go off shift when it came in. Male voice, youngish, maybe mid-20s, scared out of his mind. What did he say, exactly? First call was short. He said, "The man they're going to arrest for Martin Garrett's murder didn't do it. I saw who came out of that apartment, and it wasn't him." Then he hung up. "You said there was a second call?" 9:17 a.m. Same voice, but worse. He was whispering, like he was afraid someone would hear. Said he'd gone to the 18th precinct to report what he saw, but he recognized someone there. "The man from the photos," is what he said. Then, "They'll kill me if they know I saw." And he was gone. I made notes. No name. No callback number. The calls came from different payphones. First one was somewhere in Midtown. The background noise sounded like Penn Station. Second was quieter, maybe residential. "What did your editor say when you reported it?" Her face hardened. "Tom Briggs," he said without corroboration. "It was just another crank. We get dozens after every major crime. But this was different. I've been doing this for 8 years. I know what scared sounds like." "Did you try to follow up?" "I spent my own time on it. Checked with contacts at the 18th. Nobody remembered anyone coming in that morning about the Garrett case. But here's the interesting part." She flipped pages in her notebook. The desk sergeant's log shows a gap, 8:50 to 9:10 a.m. No entries. That never happens. Someone cleaned it up. That's what I think. But I can't prove it, and Tom won't let me use Gazette resources to dig deeper. He's already moved on to the next story. I studied her. "Why do you care? Why risk meeting me?" She was quiet for a moment. "Then Martin Garrett was a good reporter. Maybe the best we had. He was working on something big. He told me that much, said it would shake the city. Then he's dead, and suddenly nobody wants to know what he was investigating. That's not right. Any idea what the story was?" He was careful, kept his notes locked up, but about a week before he died, he asked me to check our archives for anything about city construction contracts from 2019, specifically, the Riverside development project. I knew about Riverside, a massive rezoning deal that had transformed 20 blocks of waterfront into luxury towers. Lots of money had changed hands, and not all of it had traveled in straight lines. "Did you find anything?" "Nothing that isn't public record." But Martin seemed excited about whatever he discovered. Said the real story wasn't in the contracts. It was in who signed them. My coffee arrived. I took a sip and thought. This witness? Any distinguishing features in his voice? Accent? Background noises? Nervous, but educated. Precise diction, even when scared. In the first call, I heard what sounded like an announcement. Something about Newark, so probably Penn Station. Second call was different, quieter, but I heard church bells in the background. Church bells at 9:17 a.m. That's what struck me. Most churches don't ring bells at 17 past the hour. I made more notes. This was good. Specific details we could work with. Anything else? Lisa checked her watch again. One thing. Maybe nothing. But, the day after the calls, I was leaving work, and noticed a car following me. Black sedan, tinted windows. It stayed with me for 6 blocks before I ducked into a police station. Never saw it again, but you got spooked. Yeah. That's when I stopped digging. She stood up. I've got to get back. Look, Goodwin, if Wolfe finds this witness, keep my name out of it. I've got a kid to feed. Understood. One more thing. Did you happen to record the calls? She smiled for the first time. Night desk records everything, but when I went to pull the audio files, they were gone, deleted from the system. Only my notes remain. After she left, I sat in the diner for another few minutes, thinking, a witness who saw the real killer. Someone at the precinct who scared him. Missing log entries, undeleted recordings. Martin Garrett investigating something about old construction contracts. It was starting to smell like more than just a simple murder. I paid for the coffee and headed back out into the rain. It was past 11 when I got back to the brownstone. Wolfe was still in the office, but his book was closed. Well, he asked. I gave him everything. Lisa Chen's notes, the 2 calls, the church bells, the missing records, Garrett's investigation into Riverside development. He listened without interrupting, his eyes closed. When I finished, he said, church bells at 17 minutes past the hour. Unusual. That's what I thought. Maybe we can narrow down the location. Perhaps. What time does Inspector Kramer typically arrive at his office? Usually around 8. Why? Because we're going to need to see the official file on the Garrett case. The complete file, not what was released to the press. He opened his eyes. Call him at home. Tell him I need to see him tomorrow morning at 9. He won't like being called this late. No, but he'll like it less if an innocent man is convicted, because his department missed something. Make the call. I reached Kramer on the 3rd ring. He wasn't happy, but when I mentioned we had information about a witness in the Garrett case, he agreed to meet us at his office, not the brownstone. 9 sharp, he growled. And Goodwin? This better not be one of Wolfe's grandstand plays. Would we do that to you? He hung up on me. I returned to the office. Wolfe had pulled out a map of Manhattan and was studying it with a magnifying glass. Looking for churches. There are 117 churches in Manhattan that have bells. Of those, perhaps a dozen might ring at unusual times. Tomorrow after we see Kramer, you'll visit each one within a reasonable distance of the 18th precinct. What about Penn Station? The first call. Also significant. Our witness was mobile, moving through the city, but after seeing someone at the precinct, he went to ground. Somewhere he felt safe, near a church with irregular bells. Could be staying with someone, friend, relative? Possible, but someone scared enough to vanish completely. More likely they paid cash for a room somewhere. Hotel, boarding house, perhaps a shelter. I thought about it. 3.5 days to find him. The trial starts Monday. Yes, we'll need to move quickly. Tomorrow after Kramer, you'll start with the churches. I'll work on discovering what Martin Garrett found so interesting about the Riverside development project. How? He almost smiled. I'll ask someone who would know. Set up a meeting with Henry Carilele for tomorrow afternoon. I stared at him. Henry Carilele was one of the city's biggest real estate developers, and one of the major players in the Riverside project. You think he's involved? I think he has information. Whether he'll share it is another matter. He glanced at the clock. It's late. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be demanding. I headed up to my room but didn't sleep right away. I kept thinking about a voice on the phone, terrified and alone. Somewhere in this city of 8 million, one person held the truth about Martin Garrett's death. We have 3.5 days to find them. The rain kept falling, drumming against my window like time itself, counting down to Monday morning when 12 citizens would sit in judgment on the wrong man. Unless we found out Ghost first. Wednesday morning came in gray and wet. I was at my desk by 8, making a list of churches near the 18th precinct that had bells. Wolfe wouldn't come down from the plant rooms until 9. which gave me time to plan the search pattern. Inspector Kramer's office at Center Street was exactly what you'd expect: coffee stains, cigar smoke, and the accumulated frustration of 30 years of police work. He was behind his desk when we arrived, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "This better be good, Wolfe. I've got 3 active homicides and a meeting with the commissioner at 10. Wolfe had actually left the brownstone, which showed how seriously he took this. He settled into the visitor's chair, which creaked under his weight. Dennis Kowalsski didn't kill Martin Garrett. Kramer's face went red. We have physical evidence: blood on his shoes, prints on the door, all explicable by their prior relationship. What you don't have is the witness who saw the real killer leave Garrett's apartment." That stopped him. "What witness?" I told him about the calls to the Gazette, watching his face change from skepticism to annoyance to something that might have been concern. "Why wasn't this reported to us?" "It was," Wolfe said. "The witness came to this precinct the morning after the murder. He saw someone here who frightened him into hiding. I need to know who was here between 8:50 and 9:10 that morning." Kramer picked up his phone. "Sergeant, bring me the desk log for October 3rd. "What do you mean it's not? Just bring what you have." He hung up. "The log for that morning is missing pages. We're investigating." "Convenient," I said. "Shut up, Goodwin. Look, even if this witness exists, we have a solid case against Kowalski. The DA is confident." "The DA is wrong," Wolfe interrupted. "Inspector, I need to see the complete file on Garrett. Specifically, what he was working on when he died." "That's sealed. Ongoing investigation." "Into what?" "The man is dead, his killer supposedly caught. What requires continued investigation." Kramer was quiet for a moment, chewing his cigar. Finally, Garrett had documents, copies of city contracts, bank records, correspondence, all related to the Riverside development project. And some important people would prefer those documents stay buried. The mayor's office has made it clear we're to focus on the murder, not Garrett's work. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Who gave that order?" "It came down from the commissioner. But the push started higher up." Kramer leaned forward. "Look, Wolfe, I'm not happy about it either, but I've got a solid case against Kowalski." "Why complicate things?" "Because the truth is rarely simple. Who was in the precinct that morning? Who might have frightened the witness?" Kramer pulled out a file. "Normal shift change. Plus, hell." He looked up. "Anthony Dawan was here, assistant to the deputy mayor, said he was following up on the Garrett case for City Hall at 8:50 in the morning." "That's what I thought. But when the deputy mayor's office calls, we accommodate." Wolfe stood up. A process that took effort. "Inspector, I'm going to find this witness. When I do, I'll need your assurance that he'll be protected. If he exists, if his story checks out." "He exists." Someone went to considerable trouble to erase his presence, deleted phone recordings, missing log pages. That's not done for imaginary witnesses. We left Kramer chewing his cigar and looking unhappy. In the elevator, I asked, "Anthony Dawan. A name to remember. Now you have churches to visit. Start with those closest to the precinct and work outward." Our witness went to ground quickly. He wouldn't have traveled far. I spent the rest of the morning hitting churches. St. Augustine's on East 27th, bells rang on the hour. Trinity Lutheran on East 31st, bells only on Sundays. Church of the Sacred Heart on East 33rd, no bells at all, despite what their website claimed. It was at my 4th stop that I got lucky. St. Bartholomew's on East 36th had bells, and according to the elderly maintenance man, they'd been acting up. "Been ringing at odd times for 2 weeks, he told me. "Electrical problem. Sometimes they go off at 1/4 past, sometimes 20 past. We're getting it fixed next week." "Do you keep a record of when they ring?" "Father Mendez might. He's been complaining about it, disturbing his morning prayers." Father Mendez was a small man with sharp eyes, who looked at my detective license with interest. "The bells? Yes, I've been documenting the malfunctions for the repair company." "Why?" "I'm trying to trace someone who might have been in this neighborhood on October 3rd, around 9:17 a.m. They would have heard bells. He pulled out a notebook. October 3rd. Yes. They rang at 9:17, 9:32, and 9:51 that morning. Very annoying. May I ask who you're looking for? A witness in a criminal case? Someone scared? Probably looking for a place to hide. Are there any hotels or rooming houses nearby? Several. The Marlowe Hotel is 2 blocks east. Respectable place. There's a boarding house on 35th, and the St. Catherine's shelter on 37th. I thanked him and started canvassing. The Marlowe had no single men checking in on October 3rd. The boarding house was a dead end. They required a week's notice, but at St. Catherine's shelter, I found something. The shelter was run by Sister Margaret, a nun who looked like she could arm wrestle longshoremen and win. She was suspicious until I explained I was trying to help someone who might be in danger. We had a young man come in that morning, she said, checking her register. Very frightened. Wouldn't give his full name. Just David. Paid for a week in advance. Unusual. Most pay day by day. Is he still here? Left yesterday morning. Packed what little he had. And disappeared. He seemed terrified. Kept looking out windows, starting at every sound. Can you describe him? Mid-20s. Thin. Nervous. Educated. You can always tell. Wore glasses. Had a small scar on his left hand. Very polite. Helped with dishes every meal. Did he say anything about why he was scared? Sister Margaret hesitated. He asked once if I thought God forgave those who told the truth, even when it was dangerous. I told him the truth was always right. He didn't seem comforted. Any idea where he went? None. But he left this behind. She handed me a paperback book, a collection of poetry. Inside the front cover was a stamp, property of the New York Public Library, Fordham Branch. I called Wolfe from a payphone. Our ghost has a name, David, and possibly a library card. The Fordham Branch is in the Bronx, an unusual choice for someone hiding in Manhattan. Maybe that's where he's from. Worth checking. Yes. But first, come back. Henry Carilele will be here at 3, and I want you present. I grabbed a sandwich on the way back, thinking about David with his poetry book, and his fear. He'd stayed hidden for over a week, then suddenly bolted. What had spooked him? When I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was at his desk, surrounded by newspaper clippings and photocopies. Find anything about Riverside? I asked. Several things. The project was approved despite significant community opposition. 3 city councilmen changed their votes at the last minute. Each received substantial campaign contributions from companies that proved difficult to trace. Let me guess. They traced back to Carilele. Eventually. But through enough shells and subsidiaries to maintain legal deniability. More interesting is this. He held up a document. Martin Garrett requested these specific contracts from the city archives 2 weeks before his death, or related to the electrical subcontracts for Riverside. What's special about electrical work? That's what we'll ask Mr. Carilele. At exactly 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Henry Carilele didn't look like a man who'd bent city government to his will. He was small, neat, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses rather than construction sites. His lawyer, a tall man named Brenner, looked like he'd rather be billing someone else for his time. I showed them to the office. Carilele took the red chair like he owned it. Mr. Wolfe, I understand you wanted to discuss the Riverside development project. I should mention that Mr. Brenner has advised me not to answer any questions about pending litigation. There is no litigation, Wolfe said. Yet, I'm investigating the murder of Martin Garrett. I understood someone had been arrested. The wrong someone. Mr. Garrett was investigating your Riverside project when he died. Specifically, the electrical contracts. Why would those interest him? Carilele glanced at his lawyer, who nodded slightly. I have no idea. All our contracts were properly bid and awarded. Every I dotted. Every T crossed. By whom? I'm sorry. Who crossed the T's? Who actually signed the contracts? Another glance at Brenner. Various city officials. The usual process. Wolfe opened a folder. I have here copies of the contracts Mr. Garrett was examining. Interesting reading. The electrical work was subcontracted to Pinnacle Systems, which subcontracted to Apex Electric, which subcontracted to a company called Bright Future Innovations. Are you familiar with that company? Carlyle's tan seemed to fade slightly. We work with many subcontractors. Bright Future Innovations exists only on paper. It was created 2 days before the contract was signed and dissolved, 3 days after the work was completed. Its registered address is a mail drop. Its president, one Anthony Dawan, signed for payments totaling $8 million. I sat up straighter. There was that name again. I don't see how this relates to... Brenner started. Anthony Dawan is currently assistant to the deputy mayor. At the time of the contracts, he was a minor city employee in the permits department, yet he signed for $8 million in city funds. Mr. Garrett discovered this. Now Mr. Garrett is dead, and Mr. Dawan was at the police station. The morning our witness attempted to report what he saw. Carlyle stood up. I think we're done here, Mr. Brenner. My client has no knowledge of any impropriety. Sit down, Wolfe commanded. Surprisingly, Carlyle sat. Mr. Carlyle, I'm not interested in your construction projects or your creative financing. I'm interested in keeping an innocent man out of prison. But if you leave now, I'll be forced to share what I know with Inspector Kramer, the district attorney, and Mr. Cohen at the Gazette. I doubt your investors would appreciate the scrutiny. Carlyle's hands gripped the chair arms. What do you want? The truth. Did you know Martin Garrett? We'd met. He interviewed me several times over the years, adversarial but professional. When did you last speak with him? About 3 weeks ago. He called with questions about Riverside. I referred him to our public relations department. He didn't call about construction. He called about Anthony Dawan. Silence. Brenner leaned in to whisper to his client, but Carlyle waved him off. Garrett knew about Bright Future? I don't know how he found out. We were very careful. He wanted to know about Dawan's involvement. What did you tell him? Nothing. I ended the call. But Garrett was persistent. He said he had documents, signatures, proof of the money trail he was going to publish. And that would have been inconvenient. Devastating. The Riverside project led to dozens of others. If it came out that the initial contracts were irregular, it would trigger investigations into everything. Wolfe leaned back. So you killed him? No. Carlyle half rose from his chair. No, I didn't kill him. I was in Chicago that night at a conference. 300 witnesses. Then who did? I don't know. When I heard about his death, I thought maybe Dawan. He had the most to lose. His whole career was built on the money from Bright Future. But the police arrested the neighbor, so I figured I was wrong. Did you speak to Dawan after Garrett's death? He called me. Wanted to make sure I hadn't kept any records from Bright Future. I told him everything had been destroyed years ago, as agreed. But Garrett found copies. Garrett was resourceful, and someone in city archives was careless. Wolfe studied him. Mr. Carlyle, I'm going to find the witness who saw Garrett's killer. When I do, the truth will come out. All of it. Your best option is to cooperate fully now. Carlyle looked at his lawyer, then back at Wolfe. I've told you what I know. Dawan had motive. He was at the precinct. When your witness tried to report, draw your own conclusions. I have. Mr. Brenner, your client will make himself available if needed. Within reason. After they left, I turned to Wolfe. Dawan's our killer. Possibly. Or someone protecting Dawan. The web of corruption around Riverside is extensive. Garrett pulled one thread, and someone decided to cut it before the whole thing unraveled. So what now? Now you go to the Bronx. Find what connection our witness David has to the Fordham Library. I'll have Saul begin surveillance on Mr. Dawan. If David surfaces again, he'll likely try to contact someone, family, friend, employer. We need to be ready. And if Dawan's the killer, then we need David's testimony more than ever. A frightened witness trumps circumstantial evidence, but only if the witness is alive to testify. I headed for the door, then stopped. 3 days left. You think David's still in the city? He left the shelter yesterday. Not enough time to go far. Not without leaving a trail. He's here, Archie. Scared alone. But here. Find him. I grabbed my coat and headed out. The rain had stopped, but the clouds hung low and heavy, like the city was holding its breath. Somewhere out there, David was hiding with his terrible knowledge. And somewhere else, the killer was looking for him too. It was going to be a race, and in this city, the winner was usually whoever was willing to run the hardest. The Fordham branch of the New York Public Library sat on Bainbridge Avenue like a brick fortress against ignorance. I arrived just after 4, badge in hand and questions ready. The head librarian, Mrs. Okonkwo, was a formidable woman who regarded my credentials with deep suspicion. "We don't give out information about our patrons," she said firmly. "I understand. But this is about protecting someone who may be in danger." A young man named David, mid-20s, thin, glasses. "He had one of your books." Her expression softened slightly. "David Chen? Oh dear, is he all right?" "Chen." Finally, a last name. "You know him?" "He's been coming here since he was a boy. Such a sweet young man, always reading poetry, philosophy. He volunteers with our literacy program." She paused. "I haven't seen him in nearly 2 weeks. That's not like him. Does he live nearby?" "With his grandmother, I believe, on Creston Avenue." She hesitated, then pulled out a card file. Here he listed her as his emergency contact. May Chen. I thanked her and headed for Creston Avenue. The building was one of those pre-war walk-ups that had seen better decades, warm but clean, with the smell of cooking food mixing with industrial cleaner in the hallways. May Chen lived on the 4th floor. She answered on the 3rd knock. A tiny woman who couldn't have been 5 feet tall, but carried herself like someone twice that size. When I showed her my ID and mentioned David, her face crumpled. "Is he safe? Please, is my grandson safe?" "That's what I'm trying to ensure, Mrs. Chen. May I come in?" Her apartment was small but immaculate, filled with photographs and the smell of jasmine tea. She served me a cup without asking if I wanted one, the kind of hospitality that brooks no refusal. "David called me last week," she said, hands trembling around her own cup, so frightened. "He said he saw something terrible, and now terrible people were looking for him." "Did he tell you what he saw?" "No. Just that someone had been killed, and the police had the wrong man. He wanted to help, but he was scared. I told him to come home, but he said that would put me in danger." "Mrs. Chen, I need to find David before the people he's afraid of. Do you have any idea where he might go? Friends? Other family?" She shook her head. "His parents died when he was young. I raised him. He doesn't have many friends. Always shy. Always in his books. But, yes, there's a girl, Sophia Martinez. They met at the library program. I think he cares for her very much." She gave me Sophia's information. She worked at a bookstore in Greenwich Village. I promised to do everything I could to keep David safe, and left her clutching a photograph of her grandson at his college graduation. The drive back to Manhattan gave me time to think. David Chen. Now I had a name. A bookish young man who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and seen something that terrified him into hiding. But why had he been near Garrett's apartment that night? I called Wolfe from the car. "Our ghost is David Chen. Lives with his grandmother in the Bronx. Volunteers at the library. There's a girl, Sophia Martinez. I'm heading to see her now." Interesting. Chen is a common name. But still, Archie, when you spoke with Lisa Chen at the Gazette, did she mention any relatives? I thought back. No. You think they're related? Worth investigating. The coincidence is notable. Proceed with Miss Martinez, but carefully. If David has contacted her, others may be watching. The bookstore was called Leaves of Grass, tucked between a vintage clothing shop and a vegan cafe on MacDougal Street. It was the kind of place that smelled of old paper and ambition, where Kerouac probably shoplifted, and Ginsberg definitely loitered. Sophia Martinez was behind the counter, a striking woman with dark hair and paint under her fingernails. When I introduced myself and mentioned David, she went very still. "I don't know any David Chen," she said. It was a lie. And not a good one. Her eyes had already given her away. "Miss Martinez, I'm trying to help him. He's in danger, and it's getting worse every day. The trial starts Monday. If he doesn't come forward—" I said, "I don't know him." I leaned on the counter. "Your boss might be interested to know you've been letting someone sleep in the back room. The blanket's still visible behind those boxes." Her composure cracked. "You can't. He's not. Is he here now?" "No. He left this morning. Said it was getting too dangerous, that he had to keep moving." "Where did he go?" "I don't know. I begged him to go to the police. But he said the police were part of it, that someone there would recognize him. From the photos. You mentioned photos to the Gazette. What photos?" She bit her lip, then made a decision. "Wait here." She disappeared into the back room, and returned with an envelope. Inside were newspaper clippings, all from the society pages of various papers, charity galas, political fundraisers, the kind of events where the powerful go to be seen. "David works part-time as a waiter for Premier Catering," Sophia explained. "They do all the high-end political events. David's in the background of a lot of these photos. He jokes that he's served champagne to everyone who matters in this city." I studied the clippings. There, in the background of a shot from a Police Benevolent Association dinner, a young Asian man in a server's uniform, barely visible, but visible enough if you knew to look. He was working the night Garrett died. A private party in Garrett's building. 40th birthday for some Wall Street type. David was taking a smoke break in the alley when he saw someone leave Garrett's apartment, someone he recognized from these events. Who? He wouldn't tell me. Said the less I knew, the safer I'd be. But it was someone important, someone whose photo appears in the papers. And when he went to report it, that same person was at the police station. I pocketed the clippings. "If he contacts you, I'll call you, I promise. Just, please find him before they do." I left the bookstore and called Wolfe again. David Chen was working as a waiter in Garrett's building that night. He saw someone he recognized from political events, someone whose photo appears in the papers. My money's on Dorkin, perhaps. But we need David's testimony. Where would a frightened young man go when even his girlfriend's bookstore feels unsafe? Somewhere public. Somewhere with crowds. Yes. But also somewhere he knows. Archie, contact Premier Catering. Find out what events they're working this weekend. If David needs money, he might risk showing up for a shift. It was a good thought. Premier Catering's office was in Long Island City. The manager, a harried woman named Janet, didn't want to talk until I mentioned it was about protecting one of her employees. David? He's scheduled for tomorrow night. The mayor's advisory council dinner at the Waldorf. But he hasn't confirmed. We've been trying to reach him. Who else is working that event? She checked her list. 20 servers, 4 bartenders, usual support staff. Why? Just covering bases. Has anyone else been asking about David? Her face changed. Actually, yes. A man called yesterday, said he was David's uncle, wanted to know his schedule. I didn't tell him anything. We don't give out employee information. What did he sound like? Educated? Authoritative? Like someone used to getting answers. I thanked her, and headed back to the brownstone. It was past 7 when I arrived. Wolfe was in the office with Saul Panza, who looked like he'd had an interesting day. "Dorkin's nervous," Saul reported. "Made 6 phone calls from payphones today. Kept looking over his shoulder. Whatever he's worried about, it's eating at him." "Did you get photos?" "Everything." Saul handed over a roll of film. "Want me to keep on him?" "Yes. But tomorrow night, I want you at the Waldorf. The mayor's advisory council dinner. Our witness might appear." After Saul left, I developed the film in the dark room. The shots were clear. Dorkin outside City Hall. Dorkin at a payphone. Dorkin meeting with someone in a car. I brought the prints to Wolfe. He studied them with his magnifying glass. This last one, the man in the car, recognize him? I looked closer. That's Assistant D.A. Morrison. He's prosecuting the Kowalsski case. Indeed, An interesting meeting between a potential suspect and the prosecutor trying the wrong man. I wonder what they discussed. You think Morrison's in on it? I think everyone connected to this case has reasons to want it resolved quickly and quietly. The question is whether those reasons include covering up murder. The phone rang. I answered it. Goodwin. Inspector Kramer. We've got a problem. Dennis Kowalsski was attacked in his cell an hour ago. Someone paid another inmate to shut him up permanently. Is he alive? Barely. He's at Bellevue under guard. But if someone wanted him dead before trial, they're getting desperate. Inspector, we need protection for a witness. David Chen. He saw the real killer. Produce him, and I'll protect him. Until then, I've got nothing to spare. I hung up and told Wolfe. His face darkened. They're accelerating. First Garrett, now an attempt on Kowalski. David Chen is the only loose end left. Tomorrow night at the Waldorf. If he shows up, he'll show up. He needs money, and he knows that environment. He'll feel safe in a crowd of hundreds. Just another invisible server. Wolfe leaned back. But he won't be the only one looking for him there. Archie, we'll need more than just Saul. Call Fred and Ori. I want that dinner covered from every angle. And if Dawkins shows up, then we'll have all our players in one room. The killer, the witness, and us. Someone will make a move. And when they do, we'll be ready. I started making calls. 2 days until trial, and all our chips were going on tomorrow night. The Mayor's Advisory Council dinner. 500 of the city's most powerful people gathered in one ballroom. Somewhere in that crowd would be a frightened young man who held the truth, and somewhere else would be the person willing to kill to keep that truth buried. It was going to be an interesting party. Friday morning started with bad news. Dennis Kowalsski had developed complications overnight. His attacker had done more damage than initially thought. He was in critical condition, and the doctors weren't making promises. If he dies, I told Wolfe over breakfast, they'll charge someone with his murder, while someone else rots in jail for a murder he didn't commit. All the more reason to find David Chen tonight. Wolfe was attacking his eggs Benedict with unusual vigor. What time does the dinner begin? Cocktails at 6, dinner at 7:30. Saul's already got the service entrance covered. Fred's working as temporary kitchen staff. Janet at Premier owed me a favor. Ori will be outside watching arrivals. And you? I'll be inside. Borrowed a tux from Lily Rowan's friend, who's about my size. I'm her +1 for the evening. Wolfe's eyebrows rose. Miss Rowan is attending. Her father's company donated heavily to the mayor's campaign. She got an invitation, and doesn't mind helping. Plus, she says she wants to see me catch a killer in formal wear. Phooey. What about Mr. Dawkins? His name's on the guest list. Assistant to the Deputy Mayor, rates an invitation. Good. Wolfe pushed back from the table. I have phone calls to make. The pieces are in position, but the game isn't won until the king falls. I spent the afternoon coordinating with the team and going over the Waldorf's layout. The dinner was in the grand ballroom. 4 entrances, plus service doors. 500 guests meant at least 25 servers, more if they were doing the full formal service. At 5 o'clock, I picked up Lily at her apartment. She looked stunning in a black gown that probably cost more than most cars. So, she said, sliding into the taxi, which one's the murderer? Probably the nervous-looking guy from the deputy mayor's office. But keep your eyes on the servers. We're looking for a young Asian man. Thin, glasses, goes by David. And if I spot him, signal me. Don't approach him. He's likely to run. The Waldorf's grand ballroom was already filling when we arrived. I spotted 3 city councilmen, 2 judges, and enough lawyers to staff a small country. Dawkins was near the bar, sweating despite the air conditioning. There's your man, Lily murmured. He looks ready to jump out of his skin. She was right. Dawkins kept checking his phone, scanning the room, starting whenever someone approached. Whatever he was expecting tonight, it had him wound tight. We circulated, Lily playing the socialite while I played the attentive escort, and watched the servers. They moved through the crowd like ghosts, invisible until you needed them. Perfect cover for someone trying to hide. At 6:30, I spotted Saul by the kitchen doors. He gave a small shake of his head. No sign of David yet, but Premier Catering's vans were still arriving with supplies. He could slip in any time. Archie. Lily touched my arm. Your nervous friend just got more nervous. I looked. Assistant DA Morrison had arrived and was making a beeline for Dawkin. They spoke quietly, urgently. Morrison kept gesturing toward the service doors. They know he's coming, I said. They're watching for him too. Then we'd better find him first. The dinner bell rang at 7:30. 500 of New York's finest citizens filed into the dining room. Finding their assigned tables, Lily and I were at table 32, which gave us a good view of both the dais and the service stations. The servers emerged in formation, professional and precise. I scanned each face. Nothing. The salad course came and went. Still nothing. Then during the soup service, I saw him. David Chen was working the far side of the room, keeping his head down, moving efficiently but carefully. He'd changed his appearance slightly. No glasses, hair slicked back, but it was him. The way he held himself, the nervous glance toward the exits, the careful distance he kept from the head table where Dawkins sat. I caught Lily's eye and nodded toward him. She understood immediately. I need to powder my nose, she announced to the table. Archie, be a dear and order the fish for me. She stood and began making her way across the room, timing it so she'd intercept David's path. I watched Dawkins, waiting for him to notice. It happened during the entree service. David was refilling water glasses when he had to pass near the head table. Dawkins glanced up, casual at first, then his face went white. He grabbed Morrison's arm, whispered urgently. Morrison stood up, scanning the room. His eyes found David just as Lily accidentally bumped into him, spilling water. Oh, I'm so sorry, she explained loudly, making a fuss. Every eye in the vicinity turned to watch. David tried to help her, then froze as he realized the attention he'd drawn. His eyes met mine across the room, and I saw the moment he recognized what was happening. The fear, the indecision, the desperate need to run. I stood up, moving toward him. But Morrison was closer. He was pushing through the crowd, hand reaching inside his jacket. That's when Fred emerged from the kitchen doors behind David. Hey David, Janet needs you in the kitchen. Emergency. David didn't hesitate. He bolted for the kitchen, Fred right behind him. Morrison tried to follow, but Lily chose that moment to have a fainting spell, collapsing dramatically in his path. I reached the kitchen doors, just as Saul appeared from the other direction. Go, he said. I'll handle Morrison. The kitchen was chaos, steam, shouts, the clatter of dishes. I spotted Fred, near the back exit. Loading dock, he said. He's scared but talking. I found David Chen pressed against a delivery van, looking like he wanted to disappear into the metal. Up close, I could see why his grandmother worried. He'd lost weight. His clothes hung loose, and his hands shook with more than cold. David? I'm Archie Goodwin. I work for Nero Wolfe. We've been looking for you. They'll kill me. His voice was barely a whisper. Just like they killed Mr. Garrett. Who killed him, David? Who did you see? He shook his head. I can't. You don't understand. It's not just one person. It's all of them. They're all connected. Then help us expose them. Dennis Kowalsski is dying in a hospital for a crime he didn't commit. You're the only one who can save him. I tried. I went to the police, and he was there, in the station, talking to the desk sergeant, like they were old friends. How can I trust anyone when the killers have friends everywhere? You can trust us. Nero Wolfe doesn't work for the city or the police. He works for the truth. David looked at me, and I saw him weighing his options. Finally, it was Dawkins. Anthony Dawan. I saw him leave Mr. Garrett's apartment at 11:47 p.m. His shirt had blood on it. You're certain? I've served him drinks at a dozen events. I know his face, his walk, the way he checks his phone every 30 seconds. It was him. Will you testify to that? Before he could answer, the loading dock door slammed open. Morrison stood there, no longer the composed prosecutor. His hand was inside his jacket, and his face was cold. "Step away from him, Goodwin." "With what authority? This isn't a courtroom." "The authority of keeping this city from tearing itself apart. You have no idea what Garrett was about to expose. How many careers, how many lives would be ruined. So you covered up a murder." "I didn't know about the murder until after. Dawkins called me in a panic. By then, Kowalski had already been arrested. It seemed cleaner to let it play out." "Cleaner? I kept myself between him and David. Is that what you call sending someone to kill Kowalski in his cell?" Morrison's face tightened. "That wasn't supposed to happen. Dawkins panicked when he heard about your investigation. I told him to wait, that Kowalski would be convicted. But he took initiative. And now you're here to clean up his mess?" "I'm here to prevent a catastrophe. If David testifies, it won't stop with Dawkins. The whole Riverside project will unravel. Dozens of people will be implicated. The city government will be paralyzed. Better that than sending an innocent man to prison." Morrison's hand started to emerge from his jacket. That's when Archie appeared behind him, pressing something into his back. "I'd leave it where it is," Archie said calmly. "Lots of witnesses here." Morrison froze. In the distance, I could hear sirens. Saul must have called Kramer. "It's over," I told Morrison. "David's going to testify, Dawkins going to be arrested, and you're going to be disbarred at minimum, probably jailed." Morrison's shoulders sagged. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. Archie relieved him of a .38 revolver as 2 patrol cars screeched into the loading area. Inspector Kramer himself climbed out of the lead car. He took in the scene. Morrison in custody, David Chen shaking but standing, me trying to look like I'd had everything under control. "Goodwin," he said. "You want to tell me why I just had to leave a perfectly good poker game?" "Because David Chen saw Anthony Dawan leave Martin Garrett's apartment with blood on his shirt, and Assistant DA Morrison just tried to prevent him from testifying about it." Kramer looked at David. "That true, son?" David straightened up. For the first time since I'd found him, he looked like the young man in his grandmother's photograph. "Yes, sir. I saw Anthony Dawan commit murder, and I'm willing to testify." Kramer nodded. "Then let's get you somewhere safe while we sort this out." He turned to his men. "Bring Morrison in, and someone find Anthony Dawan before he rabbits." "He's inside," I said. "At table 1, probably wondering why the kitchen's in chaos." "Not anymore," Saul said, joining us. "He tried to leave when the patrol cars arrived. Fred and I convinced him to wait. He's cuffed to a chair in the wine cellar." Kramer almost smiled. "Wolfe trained you boys well. All right, let's wrap this up." As they led Morrison away and got David into a protective custody vehicle, I felt the adrenaline starting to fade. We'd done it. Found our ghost witness, exposed the killer, prevented a miscarriage of justice. "Archie." Lily appeared at the loading dock door, looking remarkably composed for someone who'd fake fainted 10 minutes ago. "Did we win?" "Yeah. We won, though your dress probably didn't survive the experience." She looked down at the water stains and smiled. "Worth it. Besides, I've had my eye on a new one. You can buy it for me to say thanks for my performance tonight." I laughed and offered her my arm. "Let's get out of here. I need to call Wolfe and tell him his ghost has been found." As we walked back through the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of the grand ballroom, 500 of New York's most powerful people, and half of them were on their phones, probably trying to figure out how the Dawan arrest would affect their interests. By Monday, Dennis Kowalsski would be free, David Chen would tell his truth in court, and the city would have to reckon with the corruption that had nearly sent an innocent man to prison. Not bad for a Friday night's work. Saturday morning arrived with headlines screaming about corruption at City Hall. The Gazette had run a special edition. Lon Cohen's revenge for being scooped on his own reporter's murder. Dawan's arrest, Morrison's involvement, the whole Riverside scandal laid bare. I was at my desk, working through the morning mail, when the phone rang. Nero Wolfe's office. Archie Goodwin speaking. "Mr. Goodwin, this is Janet from Premier Catering. I'm worried about David. He was supposed to meet with the police this morning to give his full statement, but he never showed up. I sat up straight. When did you last hear from him? He called last night after everything. Said he was going to stay with a friend, that he'd be at the precinct at 9. It's past 10 now. Which friend? He didn't say. Mr. Goodwin, there's something else. A man came by the office an hour ago asking about David. Said he was a reporter. But something felt wrong. He had hard eyes, you know. I knew. Can you describe him? 40s, medium build, expensive suit, scar on his left cheek. He wanted to know if David had picked up his last paycheck. Did David? No. It's still here. $500, he needs it. But, Janet, if David contacts you, tell him to call me immediately. And if the man with the scar comes back, don't tell him anything, and call the police. I hung up and dialed Kramer. He answered on the second ring, already irritated. Don't tell me you've lost my witness, Goodwin. I didn't lose him. He never made it to your precinct, and someone's looking for him. Professional, from the sound of it. Kramer cursed. Dawkins not talking, but his lawyer's been making calls all morning. Big money lawyers, not the public defender type. Someone's bankrolling his defense, someone who doesn't want David testifying Monday. I'll put out an alert, but this city's got 8 million hiding places. I called Wolfe in the plug rooms. David Chen's missing again. Someone with money has hired professional help to find him. Of course they have. Mr. Dawkins is a small fish who knows where the big fish swim. They can't afford to let him talk, and David's testimony would compel him to deal. So what do we do? What we always do. Use our brains. David was frightened, but came to the dinner because he needed money. He still needs that money. Where else might he try to obtain it? I thought about it. His grandmother. Would he risk her safety? No. Sophia Martinez. Possibly. But there's another option. Archie, you said Lisa Chen, at the Gazette, took the original calls. Have you verified whether she's related to David? I hadn't. Sometimes I'm thick. I'll check now. It took 3 calls, but I confirmed it. Lisa Chen was David's cousin, which meant when David made those terrified calls to the Gazette, he wasn't calling randomly, he was reaching out to family. I drove to Lisa Chen's apartment in Queens. It was a modest building near Astoria Park, the kind where everyone knows everyone else's business. I was about to buzz her apartment when I noticed the black sedan parked across the street, tinted windows, engine running, the kind of car that screams surveillance to anyone paying attention. I walked past the building, turned the corner, and found the service entrance. The lock was decent, but not impossible. 3 minutes later, I was in the stairwell, heading for the 4th floor. Lisa's apartment door was slightly open, never a good sign. I pushed it wider, hand instinctively reaching for the .38 in my shoulder holster. The living room was a mess, furniture overturned, papers scattered, but no blood, no body. Lisa? I called out. A muffled sound from the bedroom. I found her tied to a chair, gagged, but alive. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. I cut her free with my pocket knife. How long ago? 20 minutes, she gasped. Man with a scar. He wanted to know where David was. I told him I didn't know, but he didn't believe me. Did David contact you? She hesitated, then nodded. This morning, he was scared. Said someone tried to grab him outside the friend's apartment where he'd stayed. He asked if he could come here, but I told him about the sedan that's been watching my building since yesterday. Where is he now? I can't tell you. He made me promise. Said the fewer people who knew, the safer he'd be. Lisa, there's a professional hunter after him. David doesn't know how to hide from someone like that. I do. She studied my face, then made a decision. He's at the boat basin, Pier 47. There's an old houseboat that belongs to a friend who's in Florida. David has the key. I helped her pack a bag, go to a hotel, register under a false name. Don't come back until this is over. What about David? I'll find him before they do. I left the way I'd come, checking for surveillance. The sedan was still there, but now I knew what I was looking for. There was another car at the corner, gray Toyota, trying to look inconspicuous. They had the building boxed. I made it to my car and called Saul. I need backup at Pier 47. Quiet approach. Someone's hunting our witness. On my way. Fred's with me. The boat basin was Saturday afternoon busy. Weekend sailors prepping their boats. Families enjoying the sun that had finally broken through the clouds. I parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot. Pier 47 was at the far end, where the nicer boats gave way to liverboards and projects. The houseboat was obvious. A converted trawler that had seen better decades. Sea Dreams painted on the stern in fading letters. I was 50 feet away when I saw him. The man with the scar, moving along the dock with the easy grace of someone comfortable with violence. He was checking boats systematically, getting closer to Sea Dreams. I needed to get to David first. I dropped down to the lower dock, using the moored boats as cover. The water smelled of diesel and dead fish, but it gave me an angle Scarface couldn't see. I reached Sea Dream's stern just as Scarface arrived at the bow. Through the porthole, I could see David inside, reading a book, oblivious to the danger 20 feet away. I eased onto the deck, opened the cabin door silently. David looked up, startled. "Don't say a word," I whispered. "Follow me, now." To his credit, he didn't argue. We went out the stern door just as Scarface was picking the lock on the bow entrance. I got David onto the lower dock, then heard footsteps above us. Scarface had realized the boat was empty, and was coming to check the stern. That's when Saul appeared on the upper dock, looking for someone. Scarface spun, hand going to his jacket, but Fred was already behind him. And whatever Fred said, made Scarface freeze. "Hands where we can see them," Saul continued. "Nice and easy." Scarface complied, but his eyes found me and David on the lower dock. He smiled, not a pleasant expression. "You're just postponing the inevitable," he said. His voice was cultured, with a trace of Boston. "My employer has resources you can't imagine. The boy will never make it to court. Your employer's going to need those resources for his own defense," I said. "Who hired you?" He laughed. "You think this ends with Dawkins? He's nothing. A bagman who got ambitious? The real power stays in the shadows." "Not anymore. David's testimony starts Monday. After that, the dominoes fall where they may. If he lives that long." I heard sirens approaching. Saul must have called it in. Scarface heard them too, and made a decision. He broke free from Fred, dove off the dock into the murky water. Fred started to follow, but I called him off. The police could fish him out or not. We had what we came for. I got David to my car while Saul handled the cops. He was shaking again, the fear back in full force. "They found me," he kept saying. "Even there they found me. That's the last time they will. You're staying at Wolfe's until the trial. Best protection in the city. But my grandmother. We'll protect her too. This ends Monday, David. You testify, Dawkins goes down, and whoever hired our scarred friend gets exposed. After that, you get your life back." He was quiet for a moment. "Then Mr. Garrett was a good man. He was always kind to the service staff, remembered our names. He didn't deserve to die." "No, he didn't. But you can give him justice. That's all any of us can do for the dead." I drove him to the brownstone, where Wolfe was waiting in the office. He studied David, like he was a rare orchid, interesting but potentially delicate. "Mr. Chen, you've led us quite a chase. I'm sorry. I was scared. Fear is rational when people are trying to kill you, but now you're under my roof, and I don't allow guests to be murdered. Archie will show you to a room. Rest. Eat. Tomorrow we'll prepare your testimony." "What about the man who's hunting me?" Wolfe's face hardened. "He made a mistake. He threatened someone under my protection, and implied his employer has resources. I have resources too. And unlike his employer, I'm not constrained by the need to remain hidden. We'll find out who's behind this." I showed David to the guest room on the 3rd floor. Good locks, no fire escape, access. Fritz brought up a tray of food that would have tempted a dead man. David ate like he hadn't seen real food in 2 weeks, which he probably hadn't. When I returned to the office, Wolfe was on the phone with someone. Speaking in the tone he reserved for people who owed him favors, he hung up and turned to me. The man with the scar is Vincent Krauss, professional problem solver, usually works out of Boston. His presence here indicates serious money and serious concern. Who hired him? That's what we'll discover tomorrow. I've invited someone for dinner who might have answers. Henry Carilele has agreed to return, and this time, I think he'll be more forthcoming. Why? Because his Riverside project is about to collapse regardless. The smart money is already pulling out. His best option now is to cooperate fully and hope for leniency. And if he doesn't know who hired Krauss? Wolfe smiled. The one that meant someone was about to be very unhappy. Then we'll use Krauss himself. He's professional, which means he's pragmatic. When he realizes his employer has abandoned him to the police, he might be willing to negotiate. You think he'll flip? I think a man who dives into the Hudson to escape arrest has a strong sense of self-preservation. We'll see how strong when he's facing attempted murder charges with no backup. The phone rang. Kramer, with news. They'd pulled Krauss out of the river, half drowned but alive. He was in custody, not talking, but his phone had survived in a waterproof case. The tech boys were working on it. One more day, I said after hanging up. Think we'll make it to Monday? We'll make it. Mr. Chen is safe. Krauss is in custody. And tomorrow Mr. Carilele will fill in the remaining blanks. The only question is, how many people go down with Dawkins? I went up to check on David one more time. He was asleep. The first real rest he'd probably had in 2 weeks. On the nightstand was his poetry book. Bookmark at Yeats. I will arise and go now. For always night and day, I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore. Tomorrow he'd arise and go to court. But tonight, for the first time since he'd seen a killer walk away, he was safe. One more day. Sunday morning broke clear and cold. David Chen was in the kitchen with Fritz, learning how to make eggs Benedict while discussing Wordsworth. The kid had bounced back remarkably. Amazing what a good night's sleep and actual safety could do. Wolfe was in the office, having skipped his morning plant room session. That meant he was in full hunt mode. I found him studying financial documents that covered his entire desk. Carilele sent these. His lawyer did. Mr. Carilele has decided that full cooperation is preferable to federal investigation. These are the real books for Riverside development. I picked up a page. The numbers meant nothing to me, but the names did. Half of City Hall had their fingers in this pie. So who hired Krauss? That's what we'll determine at dinner. But I have suspicions. Look at this. He pointed to a series of transfers. 3 days after Garrett's death, $5 million moved from Riverside's operating account to an offshore shell company. The authorization came from someone with signing power. Carilele. He claims not, says he was locked out of the system that week for maintenance. The only other person with that level of access was the deputy mayor. I whistled. Robert Henley himself. It would explain the pressure from above, the missing police logs, Morrison's involvement. Henley had the most to lose if Riverside unraveled. He's planning to run for mayor next year. The phone rang. Saul, with news from his surveillance. Henley's moving, he reported. Just left his townhouse with 2 suitcases. His driver's heading for Teterboro Airport. Private jet? Looks like. Want me to follow? I looked at Wolfe, who nodded. Stay on him. If he's running, we need to know where. After I hung up, Wolfe was already dialing. Inspector Kramer, Nero Wolfe, you might want to have someone at Teterboro Airport. Deputy Mayor Henley appears to be taking an unexpected vacation. I could hear Kramer's response from across the room. When Wolfe hung up, he was almost smiling. The trial's tomorrow, I said. Why run now? Because Mr. Krauss failed, and David Chen will testify. Henley knows that testimony will lead investigators up the chain from Dawkins to Morrison to him. Better to run now while his accounts are still accessible. So we've got him. Perhaps, but cornered animals are dangerous. Double-check the doors and windows. I wouldn't put it past Mr. Henley to arrange one last attempt on our witness. I did a security sweep, while Fritz prepared lunch. David was in the front room, reading. He looked up when I checked the windows. "Mr. Goodwin? What happens after tomorrow, after I testify? You go back to your life. The people who wanted you dead will be in custody or running. But will it ever really be over? Mr. Garrett wrote about corruption, and they killed him. I saw the truth, and they tried to kill me. What about the next person who sees something? I didn't have a good answer for that. All we can do is make it costly for them. Every time they're exposed, it gets harder to operate. Maybe eventually it gets hard enough that they stop trying." He didn't look convinced, but before he could respond, the doorbell rang. I checked through the one-way glass. Inspector Kramer, looking like he'd swallowed something sour. "We missed him," he said, when I let him in. "Henley's jet took off 20 minutes ago. Flight plan says Montreal, but from there he could go anywhere." Wolfe received the news without surprise. Expected but unfortunate. Still, his flight itself is an admission of guilt. Has Mr. Krauss been more cooperative? His lawyer's trying to make a deal. Krauss gives up who hired him, in exchange for reduced charges. The DA's thinking about it. The same DA's office that employed Morrison. Kramer's face darkened. "Different prosecutor. Clean one. We're being very careful about who handles what, now." "As you should, Inspector. I need a favor. Tomorrow, when David testifies, I want your best men on security. Not just courthouse security, your personal team." "You expecting trouble?" "I'm expecting desperation. Henley's gone. But he had Confederates. Some may decide their best option is ensuring David never speaks." Kramer nodded. "I'll handle it personally. Nobody's getting to your boy on my watch." After he left, Wolfe returned to his financial documents. I was about to ask what he was looking for when Fritz announced that Henry Carilele had arrived for dinner. Carilele looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 days. His lawyer wasn't with him, a sign of either confidence or resignation. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, taking the red chair. "I assume you've heard about Robert. His departure?" "Yes. Were you expecting it?" "I've been expecting it since Garrett died. Robert was always the nervous type, good at spending money, bad at pressure." "You knew he ordered Garrett's death?" Carilele was quiet for a moment. "I suspected, when Garrett started asking about bright future innovations. Robert panicked, said he'd handle it. I told him to leave it alone, that Garrett couldn't prove anything without documents. But Robert, he always preferred permanent solutions. And Dawkins? Robert's creature entirely, promoted him, paid him, used him for the wet work. When Garrett got too close, Robert sent Dawkins to shut him up. I doubt he meant for it to end in murder. But Dawkins not subtle. Yet who said nothing when Kowalski was arrested?" Carilele's face showed something that might have been shame. "What would you have done? Confessed to bribing half the city government? I had stockholders, employees, projects in progress. Sometimes silence seems like the only option. Until it isn't. Why cooperate now?" "Because I'm 73 years old, Mr. Wolfe. I've made my fortune, some of it cleanly, some not, but I won't die in prison for Robert Henley's mistakes. I've documented everything, every payment, every favor, every dirty deal. My lawyers will deliver it all tomorrow." Wolfe studied him. "And in exchange, immunity from prosecution. The FBI's already agreed in principle. I give them City Hall corruption going back a decade. They let me retire to my place in Florida. What about David Chen? I'll pay for his protection as long as needed. And a college fund, if he wants it. It's the least I can do for someone with the courage I lacked." They talked for another hour, Carilele laying out the full scope of the corruption. It was breathtaking. Building inspectors, zoning board members, police commanders, judges, all bought and paid for through a web of shell companies and intermediaries. When Carilele left, Wolfe sat back in his chair, looking satisfied but tired. "We did it," I said. "David testifies tomorrow. Dawkins goes down for murder. The whole conspiracy unravels. Perhaps, but there's still tonight to get through, and men like Henley don't run without leaving insurance behind." As if on cue, the phone rang. Saul again. "Boss, you need to know this. Krauss made his deal and gave up his employer." "It wasn't Henley." "Who?" Thomas Garrett, the victim's brother. I nearly dropped the phone. Say that again. Thomas Garrett hired Krauss, not to kill David, to grab him and bring him to Garrett, alive. I relayed this to Wolfe, whose eyes opened fully. Fascinating. And where is Thomas Garrett now? That's the thing, Saul continued. He's been calling Krauss's phone all day. The cops traced the calls. He's in a hotel 6 blocks from you, the Ellington, room 412. Wolfe made a decision. Archie, call Inspector Kramer. Tell him we need him here immediately. Then check on David. This isn't over. I made the call, then went to find David. He was in his room, dressed for tomorrow, practicing his testimony in the mirror. David, did Martin Garrett ever mention his brother? He turned, surprised. Thomas? A few times. They weren't close. Thomas thought Martin wasted his talent on muckraking, as he called it. Because Thomas hired the man who was hunting you. Not to kill you, to bring you to him. David's face paled. But why? Before I could answer, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later. Wolfe had upgraded the system years ago, but someone had cut the main power, which meant the front door exploded inward. I pushed David down, drew my .38. 3 men came through the door, professional and fast, not Krauss's level, but competent enough. The first one saw me, and swung his weapon. I fired first, catching him in the shoulder. He went down, gum clattering away. The second man dove behind the sofa. The third sprinted for the stairs, heading for the upper floors, or maybe for David. Office! I yelled at David. Now! He ran. I fired at the man behind the sofa to keep him pinned, then followed. We burst into the office to find Wolfe at his desk, remarkably calm, with the .45 he kept in his drawer, aimed at the door. Archie. Status. 3 men, 1 down, 1 pinned, 1 loose in the house. Fritz. In the kitchen when it started. The lights came back on. Through the window, I could see police cars converging on the brownstone. Kramer had gotten my message. The man behind the sofa tried to make a break for it. I put a bullet into the doorframe next to his head, and he thought better of it. Drop the weapon. I yelled. Police are 30 seconds out. He dropped it. Smart man. But the third one was still loose. I could hear him moving upstairs, searching. Stay here, I told Wolfe and David. Both of you. I went hunting. Found him on the 3rd floor, trying doors. He heard me coming and spun. But I had the angle. He froze. Your employer's already in custody. I lied. This is over. Drop the gun. He hesitated, then complied. By the time I marched him downstairs, the place was full of cops. Kramer himself was in the hallway, looking at the destroyed front door. Goodwin. What the hell? Thomas Garrett hired muscle to grab our witness. These 3 were the muscle. Where's Garrett now? Ellington Hotel, room 412, unless he's run too. Kramer barked orders. Units were dispatched. The 3 intruders were cuffed and hauled away. Fritz emerged from the kitchen more offended by the damage to his door than the danger. In the office, Wolfe had put his gun away and was pouring beer. His hand was steadier than mine. Well, he said, that was dramatic. Why? David asked. Why would Mr. Garrett's brother do this? Wolfe took a long pull of beer before answering. Grief makes people irrational. His brother was murdered. The killer was caught. Justice was being served, until we intervened. In his mind, you're the reason his brother's killer might go free. But Dawkins, the real killer, Thomas Garrett, doesn't know that. Or doesn't believe it. He wanted to confront you. Perhaps convince you not to testify. Perhaps something worse. The phone rang. Kramer. We got him. Thomas Garrett, drunk as a lord, ranting about justice and truth. He'll be charged with conspiracy and attempted kidnapping. Is David still safe to testify tomorrow? Safe as Fort Knox. I'll have men here all night. And tomorrow he'll ride to court in an armored convoy. Nobody else is getting near your witness. I hung up and looked at David. He seemed smaller somehow. overwhelmed by the violence that kept finding him. "It's almost over," I told him. "Tomorrow you tell the truth, and then it ends." He nodded, but his eyes were on the poetry book in his hands. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. "Yeats," Wolfe said. "But in this case, Mr. Chen, the best found their conviction. You did. Tomorrow, speak your truth. That's all anyone can ask." We spent the rest of the evening preparing. Kramer's men patrolled outside. Fritz cooked an exceptional dinner that none of us had much appetite for. And somewhere in the city, the machinery of justice ground slowly toward morning. One more dawn, one more day. And then finally, the truth. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that makes Manhattan look scrubbed clean. David Chen sat at the breakfast table, wearing his best suit, hand steady on his coffee cup. The poetry book was closed beside his plate. "Ready?" I asked. "No. But I'll do it anyway." Kramer's convoy arrived at 8 sharp. 2 patrol cars, an unmarked sedan, enough firepower to invade a small country. David rode with Kramer and me, Wolfe having declared that his part was done, and wild horses couldn't drag him to a courtroom. The courthouse was a zoo. News of the deputy mayor's flight and Thomas Garrett's arrest had broken overnight. Reporters swarmed the steps like locusts, shouting questions at anyone who looked official. We went in through the secure entrance. The courtroom was packed, press, public, and a surprising number of city officials who probably wished they were anywhere else. Dennis Kowalsski sat at the defense table, still bandaged from the attack, but alive and looking hopeful for the first time in weeks. The prosecutor, not Morrison, but a clean ADA named Sarah Walsh, stood up. "Your Honor, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Dennis Kowalsski." Judge Harrison, a tough old bird who'd seen everything twice, raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" "New evidence has come to light, including an eyewitness who saw the real killer leaving the scene. Additionally, the original prosecutor has been arrested for attempting to suborn perjury and obstruct justice." "I see. And where is this witness?" "Present and ready to testify, Your Honor." David was sworn in. He looked small in the witness box, but his voice was clear as he began. "My name is David Chen. On the night of October 2nd, I was working as a waiter at a private party in the Excelsior building, where Martin Garrett lived. At approximately 11:45 p.m., I went outside for a break. I was in the alley between buildings when I saw Anthony Dawan exit the rear entrance of the Excelsior. His shirt had blood on it, and he was moving quickly, looking around as if afraid of being seen. "Did you recognize Mr. Dawan?" Walsh asked. "Yes. I had served him at numerous political events. I knew his face well." "What did you do then?" "I was frightened. I didn't understand what I'd seen, but I knew something was wrong. I finished my shift and went home. The next morning, I learned about Mr. Garrett's murder. I tried to call in a tip to the newspaper where my cousin works. Then I went to the police station." "What happened there?" David's voice wavered slightly. "I saw Mr. Dawan in the station, talking to officers like he belonged there. I realized then that if he was the killer, and he had friends in the police, I wasn't safe, so I ran." "And you've been hiding ever since?" "Yes. People tried to find me, to hurt me, but I couldn't let an innocent man go to prison for something he didn't do." The defense attorney stood for cross-examination, but there wasn't much to attack. David's story was simple, consistent, and corroborated by phone records, shelter logs, and the testimony of everyone who'd helped hide him. When it was over, Judge Harrison called a recess. In the hallway, Dennis Kowalsski grabbed David's hands, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he kept saying. "Thank you for coming forward. Kramer found me by the water fountain. Dawan's lawyer wants to deal, full confession in exchange for manslaughter, instead of murder one. Will the DA take it?" "Probably, with Henley gone and the whole Riverside mess exploding. They want to clean house fast." He paused. "Your boss did good work. Without him, Kowalski would be on his way to Sing Sing." "Without David Chen, you mean? He's the hero here." "Yeah, but heroes need help. That's where people like Wolfe come in." The rest of the day was anticlimactic. The judge formally dismissed charges against Kowalski. Dawkins was arraigned on murder charges, with Morrison as an accessory after the fact. The FBI announced a joint task force to investigate corruption in city contracting. By evening, 3 more city officials had retained lawyers. I drove David back to the brownstone. He wanted to collect his things before going home to his grandmother. Wolfe was in the office, orchid catalog open, but unread. He looked up when we entered. "Mr. Chen, I understand it went well." "It's over," David said. "I told the truth. People believed me. Mr. Kowalski is free." "And you? Are you free?" David considered this. "I think so. For the first time in 2 weeks I'm not afraid." He paused. "Mr. Wolfe, can I ask you something?" "Certainly. Was it worth it? All the danger? All the fear? Mr. Garrett is still dead. The deputy mayor escaped. The corruption will continue with different people. Did we really accomplish anything?" Wolfe closed his catalog. "Mr. Chen, I am not an optimist by nature. I don't believe humanity is perfectible, or that justice always prevails, but I do believe in the accumulation of small truths. Today you told one truth. Mr. Kowalski walks free because of it. That's not everything. But it's not nothing. And the bigger truths, the ones about power and corruption, will be told by others, inspired perhaps by your courage. Mr. Garrett died, trying to expose those truths. You honored his memory by ensuring his real killer was caught. The rest," Wolfe shrugged. "The rest is for tomorrow's heroes." David smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him. "Thank you, both of you. I should go. My grandmother's making celebration dinner, and if I'm late, she'll send out search parties." I drove him to the Bronx. Mei Chen was waiting on the sidewalk, tears streaming as she embraced her grandson. Through the window, I could see a feast prepared, the kind of meal that says welcome home louder than words. "Mr. Goodwin," David said, before going inside, "tell Mr. Wolfe something for me." "What's that?" "Tell him I'm keeping the poetry book, but I'm done hiding in it." Back at the brownstone, I found Wolfe in the kitchen with Fritz, discussing tomorrow's menu as if we hadn't just upended city government. "David's home," I reported. "He said to tell you he's keeping the poetry but done hiding." "Good. A man needs poetry, but not as a fortress." He turned to Fritz. "The squab then with the cherry reduction. And Archie, we'll need beer. The Rimmers is running low." "That's it? Case closed, back to routine? What would you prefer? A parade? We did what we were hired to do. An innocent man is free. A guilty one faces justice, and a witness found his courage. That's a good week's work. And Henley? The corruption? Not our responsibility. We're private detectives, not crusaders. Let the federal authorities earn their salaries." I went to get the beer, thinking about David Chen and his poetry, Dennis Kowalsski and his freedom, Martin Garrett and his unfinished story. Wolfe was right. We'd done what we were hired to do. But sometimes, in this business, that's enough. The evening editions were full of scandal and revelation. 3 more arrests, 2 more officials fleeing, 1 suicide in a city office. The Riverside project was suspended pending investigation. The mayor announced a commission on corruption, which made everyone who understood irony laugh bitterly. But in the Bronx, a young man was eating dinner with his grandmother. In his apartment, a wrongly accused man was sleeping in his own bed, and somewhere, Martin Garrett's ghost could rest, knowing his killer had been named. Not everything, but not nothing. In this city, sometimes that's the best you can hope for. Tuesday morning came quietly. No preyed-on phone calls, no one trying to break down the door, no terrified witnesses to protect. Just Fritz's breakfast and the morning paper, which made for interesting reading. The headlines were predictable. Corruption scandal rocks City Hall, and Deputy Mayor sought in murder plot. But it was Lon Cohen's editorial in the Gazette that caught my attention. He'd written about Martin Garrett, not the investigation that got him killed, but the man himself. The reporter who'd spent 15 years exposing uncomfortable truths, who'd been 3 days from publishing the story that would have blown Riverside wide open. "Archie," Wolfe said, entering the office at 11 sharp. "Has the mail arrived? On your desk?" including a package from David Chen. He raised an eyebrow and opened it. Inside was a first edition of Yeats' The Tower, worth more than David probably knew, and a handwritten note. Wolfe read it aloud. Mr. Wolfe, this belonged to my grandfather, who also believed in the accumulation of small truths. I thought you should have it. With gratitude, David Chen. Generous, I said. And perceptive. The young man understands that gifts should reflect both giver and receiver. He placed the book carefully on the shelf behind his desk. Any word from Inspector Kramer? Dorkin pled guilty this morning. 25 to life. Possibility of parole in 15. He gave up everything. Names, dates, amounts. The FBI's having Christmas early. And Morrison. Disbarred. 5 to 10 for obstruction and conspiracy. His wife filed for divorce before the ink was dry on the plea deal. What about Thomas Garrett? Released on bail. His lawyers playing the grief card hard. Distraught brother driven mad by loss. Probably get probation and counseling. Wolfe grunted. Perhaps appropriate. Grief can indeed drive men to madness. Any news of Deputy Mayor Henley? Nothing official, but Long Cohen says his sources put him in Switzerland. No extradition treaty for financial crimes. He'll surface eventually. Men like Henley can't resist the game. He'll make a deal, return when the scandal dies down, reinvent himself as a consultant or lobbyist. The phone rang. I answered, expecting a client or creditor. Instead, I got Henry Carilele. Mr. Goodwin, is Mr. Wolfe available? I'd like to thank him personally. I transferred the call to Wolfe's line and listened on my extension. Mr. Carilele, Wolfe said. I trust your arrangements with the federal authorities are proceeding smoothly. Better than expected. Immunity in exchange for full cooperation. I'll be testifying before a grand jury next week. After that, Florida and retirement. And your conscience? There was a pause, surprisingly clear. I built things, Mr. Wolfe, some of them corruptly. Yes, but they exist. Families live in those buildings, work in those offices. That's my legacy, tainted as it is. And the people hurt by your corruption. I've established a fund, anonymous donations to the families of everyone who suffered, because they wouldn't play ball. It won't undo the damage, but it's something. Another pause. Mr. Wolfe, may I ask you something? Certainly. Do you think Martin Garrett would forgive me? I didn't kill him, but I created the system that made his death inevitable. Wolfe was quiet for a moment. I didn't know Mr. Garrett, but from what I've learned, he was interested in truth, not vengeance. Your testimony will complete the work he died for. I suspect he would find that adequate. Thank you for everything. After Carilele hung up, Wolfe returned to his book. I went back to the morning paper, but my mind wandered. In 2 weeks, we'd exposed a murder, saved an innocent man, brought down a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of city government. By any measure, a successful case. So why did it feel unfinished? Maybe because Henley was sipping wine in Geneva instead of sitting in a cell. Maybe because for every corrupt official we'd exposed, 2 more were probably still operating. Or maybe because Martin Garrett was still dead. And all our efforts couldn't change that. The doorbell rang, interrupting my brooding. I checked the peephole. Lisa Chen from the Gazette. Miss Chen, I said, opening the door. Come in. How's the newspaper business? Busy, she said, following me to the office. I wanted to thank you both, for finding David, for protecting him, for everything. Family is family, I said. You would have done the same. I tried. But I didn't have your resources. She turned to Wolfe. Mr. Wolfe, I'm writing a series on Martin's investigation, finishing what he started. I wondered if you had any documents or information that might help. Wolfe studied her. You understand the risks? Mr. Garrett died for that story. The principals are dead, fled, or arrested. The time for fear has passed. Perhaps. He opened a drawer and removed a folder. Copies of everything we discovered about Riverside. Use it wisely. She clutched the folder like a lifeline. This means everything. Martin would be proud to see his work completed. After she left, I asked Wolfe, think she'll be safe? Safer than her predecessor. The powerful only kill when they think they can get away with it. Too many eyes are watching now. The day continued quietly. Fritz served lunch, lamb chops with mint sauce. Wolfe ascended to the plant rooms at 2. I paid bills, updated files, and tried not to think about how normal everything seemed. At 4, Lily Rowan called. "Archie, I'm having drinks at the Flamingo. Join me. I want to hear how the case ended." I looked at the paperwork on my desk, then at the sunshine outside. "Give me 20 minutes. The Flamingo was Lily's kind of place. Expensive, exclusive, and slightly scandalous. She was at her usual table, looking like $1 million and change. "So," she said after I'd ordered a scotch, "the hero returns. How's your witness?" "Safe at home, probably being fed to death by his grandmother." "And the city corruption? Being investigated by people who probably benefited from it. The wheel turns." She studied me. "You sound cynical. That's my job. You're supposed to be the crusading detective who believes in justice." "I believe in it. I just don't always see it." I took a drink. "We saved one man, caught one killer, exposed one conspiracy. Meanwhile, the machine grinds on, but slightly less efficiently than before. And that's something." She raised her glass. "To small victories and accumulated truths." We clinked glasses. Around us, the city's elite chattered and schemed, making deals and breaking promises. But somewhere in the Bronx, David Chen was reading poetry without fear. Somewhere, Dennis Kowalsski was rebuilding his life. Somewhere, Lisa Chen was writing truths that powerful men didn't want told. Not everything, but not nothing. I finished my drink and walked Lily home. As the sun set over Manhattan, the city looked the same as it had 2 weeks ago. The same buildings, same streets, same 8 million souls struggling through another day. But underneath, something had shifted. A few lies had been exposed. A few truths told. Tomorrow there would be new cases, new corruptions, new murders. That's the nature of the beast. But tonight, walking through the city with a beautiful woman on my arm, and the satisfaction of a job well done, I could almost believe we'd made a difference. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was in the office reading the new Yeats. He looked up when I entered. "Ah, Archie. A good evening?" "Good enough. Any calls?" "One. A potential client. Someone received a death threat, written in ancient Sumerian. I told them to come tomorrow at 11. I grinned. Back to normal then. If our work can ever be called normal. But yes, back to the work. The city provides an endless supply of puzzles, and we are solvers of puzzles. I went up to my room, thinking about puzzles and solutions, truth and lies, courage and fear. On my desk was the note I'd started to David Chen, but never sent. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the wastebasket. Some things didn't need to be said. Through my window, I could see the city lights beginning to twinkle as night fell. 8 million people, each with their own secrets, their own truths.